Thankfully, we were able to staff a little bit better. Regulations have changed, and the way that we provide service is no longer 24/7 in people's homes, but it is still with the utmost care and compassion. So it looks a little different than it did in 1983, but we still do it. We are a nonprofit organization. There are for-profit hospices and not-for-profit hospices. We are and have always been a nonprofit hospice. And we do provide the compassionate care to our hospice patients and their families, but we also provide compassionate care to those in our community impacted by grief and bereavement. Ultimately, we believe a couple key things at hospice. The first is that people are entitled to a safe and comfortable death, whatever that looks like for them. So my pain tolerance is not very high, so my level of comfort is probably a little less than other people's level of comfort, but we let our patients decide what comfort looks like for them. We believe that people are entitled to make their own decisions about their end-of-life care. That is entirely your choice. You have the ability to live and die as you choose, and hospice is here to support you in making those decisions. And we really try to not pathologize grief. In my job specifically, a lot of times I get phone calls from people and they're like, I think I'm going crazy. You're not going crazy. You're grieving and you haven't been through this before and nobody talked about it beforehand, so you don't know that this is normal yet, but it is. And that is a key tenet to what we do at our hospice, is make people realize that grief is normal and it's natural. And yeah, it can be real uncomfortable, but there's nothing wrong with grieving the loss of a person, the loss of a pet, the loss of a pregnancy, the loss of a job, a retirement. You can grieve all of that, and hospice is there to support you through it all. We do enhance the quality of life through quality, compassionate care for people affected by advanced illness and grief. So we are a hospice program. We do have a palliative care program, which I will touch on a little bit, but we also support those grievers as they are going through their journey. I think the most important thing to remember about hospice is that, and this is going to sound kind of silly maybe, but it is about life. Our hospice believes that the very last thing that you do is die. So you need to live right up until that very last moment. What that life looks like is entirely up to you, but hospice is there should you choose our services. Questions so far? Qualifying for hospice care is probably not something a lot of people have thought about in depth before. We do have a couple parameters of types of patients we can serve and when we would get a phone call to come and help out. There are a couple different criteria, but the biggest overarching one is that you have to have a prognosis with a life expectancy of 6 months or less if the disease runs its normal course. So your doctors don't have a crystal ball, we at hospice don't have crystal balls, we can't tell for sure that it's going to be 6 months, but if the disease runs its normal course, we do expect that you would die from that diagnosis within 6 months. You will notice that there is no age limit on this slide. So yes, we do provide pediatric hospice services. Thankfully, it is not very frequent, but again, the biggest overarching criteria, 6 months or less, regardless of age. You do need an attending physician, so we do need some documentation from your attending physician who's willing to say, yes, this diagnosis applies, yes, we do think it'll be 6 months or less. We also need you to have a primary care person who is able to provide that 24/7 care to you. Because again, we're not packing up and moving in. We need to know that there is someone in your life, friend, family member, 5th grade student that loves you, that's going to be there to take care of you. That is not to say that they have to live with you when hospice moves in. When my grandma signed on to hospice, that woman would not take help from literally anyone, and that was okay, because she didn't need it. She was still getting up, getting her own meals, doing what she needed to do. We were there for her when we got the phone call that she needed 24/7 assistance, and we made that happen. So just because you're signing on to hospice doesn't mean someone has to live with you, it just means you need access to that person. You do need to reside within St. Lawrence County. We are a very large geographic county, and we do cover everywhere from Cranberry Lake, Star Lake, Governor, there's a really weird Antwerp. There are parts of Antwerp that are in St. Lawrence County, which we recently learned. We're up in the Berg, we're all the way out to Glacier Falls, way down in South Poland. So are there to make sure that they agree fully to a palliative plan of care. So our patients and their caregivers must agree to a palliative plan of care. If you're unable to make your own decisions, and we'll talk about who makes those decisions for you if you can't make them yourself, that looks a little different, but for the most part, our patients are fully able to consent and aware of what hospice is and means. Who can make the phone call to refer you to hospice? You can refer yourself. That does happen every now and then. We get a lot of phone calls from family members, a lot of phone calls from healthcare proxies. We'll go into healthcare proxies. A lot of hospitals, especially cancer treatment centers, oncology departments, a lot of renal centers. Nursing homes can definitely refer. We can provide hospice in nursing homes in St. Lawrence County, and then your primary care physician or whatever specialist you may be seeing. Any of those people can pick up the phone and make a call to us. Our admissions coordinator's name is Amanda. She starts the ball rolling, and she manages to compile all of the documentation we need very swiftly. So it's not like you're going to wait forever and ever and ever. She can get things pretty quickly as long as we know that you have the big things on the left-hand side of the slide. Questions about qualifying? How to refer? Yes?
What does very quickly mean?
Very quickly means we can usually do an admission within 24 to 48 hours.
Really?
Yes.
That's good to know.
We do have to have time to gather the documentation that we need, but if that's given to us in a swift manner, our hospice doc is like on it, and they can get you certified pretty quickly. There are a couple pretty common diagnoses that we see in our hospice, and they do mirror pretty closely what the national statistics are. The only one that is more common in our county than nationwide is your 5.9% of other liver and kidney diseases. That's not on the nationwide top 5, and it is here. The most common, sorry, question? No, okay. The most common diagnosis is cancer. You don't have to have cancer to be certified on hospice. You can have any diagnosis with 6 months or less, but still the most common is cancer. The next is cardiovascular system diseases, so chronic congestive heart failure. The next is your nervous system, so any sort of dementia or stroke symptoms, respiratory symptoms, and then the liver and kidney or other diseases kind of round out the bottom. It's important to remember that each diagnosis on that list has its own criteria. It is also important to remember that I am not a medical professional, nor would you want me to be your medical professional. But a medical professional will review your records and look at, do you meet criteria for this specific disease? Because some diseases like dementia have a very long, drawn-out process. So our hospice docs, your physicians, would look at something like a dementia diagnosis, apply criteria that they know to see if you would qualify. So those are our most common. Top 5, you certainly don't have to be on that list. It can truly be anything with 6 months or less. How do we pay for it? We have an incredibly generous donor base in St. Lawrence County, so our hospice will never send a bill to one of our patients. It's just not going to happen. Thankfully, it is a Medicare benefit, so the majority of our patients are on Medicare, and that is a benefit that is fully covered for and accounted for. Other insurances also cover it. Now when I get a new job, or like my sister starts a new job, I go to her explanation of benefits and I look to see if hospice is covered. I haven't found one that it's not covered on. There are no out-of-pocket costs regardless of your insurance status though. So we do work with the Amish population in St. Lawrence County. They do not have health insurance. They're not billed for that service. If you are just uninsured because you just got to New York State and you didn't even get your feet underneath you before you came to hospice, you're not going to get a bill from us. That's just not how it's going to work. So again, the vast majority of our patients, everything is covered through their insurance, and it's just billed like it would be billed whenever you went to a doctor. Because it is a Medicare benefit, the government gets to tell us a little bit about what we have to do, and part of what we have to do is my job, so the grief and bereavement support after the patient dies. Everything else is also included, so your medications, your DME, durable medical equipment, hospital beds, walkers, things like that, all of that is when we got her into a hospice setting, people were checking on me. It wasn't just about the patient, it was about the entire family dynamic. And that's not something you usually get with just a specialist. So the benefit to hospice is that we use this interdisciplinary approach. That means that we're not just worried about the patient's physical health needs, we're worried about their emotional needs, we're worried about the family's emotional needs, we're worried about any spiritual needs that come up, we're worried about any social needs that they may have because their social circles are getting smaller. We look at all of that. It's not just the medical symptoms. And we do talk to the families, which I really think is the most important part. Every patient on hospice has access to all of these individuals, starting with our executive director, whose name is Ruth. In theory, one of our hospice patients could pick up the phone and ask to speak to the executive director, and we would get them to Ruth. Our medical director is Dr. David Dunn. I don't know if any of you know Dr. David Dunn, but he is a riot. Our director of family support services is Mary Jones. She is probably familiar to many of you. She's been with hospice for 35 years, I believe. Our director of patient services oversees our nurses and our home health aides and our LPNs. Her name is Tammy Hayes. And then each patient is going to get a registered nurse, so a nurse case manager that's going to see them. The regulations say once every 7 days, really is once a week, because our patient to nurse ratio is pretty manageable, so we're able to provide that additional level of care. If you want home health aid services or want an LPN to come and do like nail care or hair care, bathing, changing your linens, things like that, we can provide that. Not every person wants that type of support, but it is available. Every family has access to a social worker. So that social worker is there to make sure that the emotional impact of this person's illness and decline is managed not just by the person, but by the family. The social worker can walk family members and patients through things like choosing a funeral home, because we all know that we might need that someday, but we don't necessarily pick one out of a hat until we need to. Social workers are also really great about working with families to have a plan B. So if your plan A was for Aunt Joan to come and take care of the patient until they die, and Aunt Joan falls and breaks a hip and can't do that, social worker will work with you to figure out what your plan B is before we need it. Our director of spiritual support services is John Youngblood. He goes in and he's assessing each patient for any spiritual care needs. Again, not something that every patient is going to need or be interested in, but we assess and we offer whatever support we can. He's really great about connecting people to clergy or spiritual support people of their choosing. Hospice in St. Lawrence County was founded as an all-volunteer organization in 1983. We are still required by the government to provide 5% of all of the patient care hours that we provide by unpaid volunteers. So that means that volunteers are going into patients' homes and they're not providing personal care, they're providing a chance for respite for the caregiver. So I used to, a couple weeks ago, used to also be the volunteer manager. And what I would do is call up the families and ask if they're interested in a volunteer. And a lot of times I would hear, yeah, I am. I need someone to come and walk the dog for me. It's only going to take like an hour. Okay, our volunteer is not going to walk the dog for you. Our volunteer is going to afford you the opportunity to step away from the patient, walk your dog, take a breather, and know that the patient is safe with the volunteer. So our volunteer is not there to walk the dog, we're there to give you a chance to walk the dog. They are typically volunteers who have been with us for decades, and they absolutely love what they do. They are in patients' homes anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hours at a time, really just there to make sure that the caregiver has a chance to step away, but also to give that patient a chance to tell their story and have some social interaction. We have a couple of patients in nursing homes, and they absolutely love their volunteers. Sometimes we don't end up in a situation where a patient didn't realize they were going to run out of medications. Our nurses always have a count in the back of their head, so they know when there's going to need to be a refill, so our patients aren't kind of scrambling at the last minute. We do those nursing assessments and any sort of nursing support. The nursing assessments are a science and art that I do not have the skill set for. But our nurses are absolutely fabulous humans. We do provide the personal care, so again, nail care, hair care, bathing, changing of linens, things like that. The respite for the caregivers, again, is the volunteer, but we can also set up some longer term respites if you needed to go out of town for a funeral or for a wedding. We could work with local nursing homes to make a longer term respite happen. So again, we do not provide in-home 24/7 care, but we are available 24/7, 365 by phone. You can pick up the phone, you can call one of us, and you're going to actually get one of us. You're not going to get some random answering service in Rhode Island or whatever. You will talk to one of our nurses. They will work with you to figure out if they can help you over the phone. If you really just need that extra support, they will certainly dispatch one of our nurses to you. Even in the middle of a snowstorm, because that's happened. We will be there if that's what you need. We do provide that grief support for up to 13 months after the patient dies. The government regulation is that we provide it for up to a year. This slide says 13 months. I will tell you from personal experience that I'm not going to close your chart until it's been at least 14 months. Because I know that first anniversary is coming around and it's going to be really hard on you. And you're not going to necessarily want to call the next month, but maybe when you start to get a handle on things again, you'll call me. So I do keep the charts open, and I can usually find you pretty quickly in the system. What questions do you have?
To what extent could someone from another hospice make the same presentation?
Can you say that to me again?
No. To what extent could someone from another hospice organization make this kind of a quality of each presentation? Are you an exceptional one on the list of?
I don't think so.
I mean, just yeah, no, I'm just interested. I'm not shouting.
No, I understand. I think any hospice could give you the same basic layout of what we do as a hospice, because there's a lot of concrete things that every hospice has to offer. Is that what you're asking?
Well, sort of. I mean, what difference does the difference make? You've made a difference.
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer your question.
It wasn't a question. It was a statement.
I can help answer that a little bit.
Okay.
So one of the things about Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley is that we are a 5-star hospice. That's important to us simply because it indicates our commitment to patients and families. Not every hospice is a 5-star hospice. There's also a distinction between for-profit and not-for-profit hospices. Because we're not-for-profit, we're not going to, as Kate said, we're not going to deny services. We're not going to send you a bill. We're not going to do the things that a for-profit hospice is likely to do. That's another key difference. And Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley has developed organically because of people who really genuinely care. Without stop, without exception. I've never seen an organization, any organization, that is as
St. Lawrence County have
So-
a facility like that?
We don't have a facility. If you win the lottery and would like to help build one, that would be fabulous. We don't have a facility. We do have the ability to contract with hospitals. If the pain isn't managed at home, we can make that type of service work, but we don't have a move-in 24/7 situation. My experience with my grandma when we got to that point was a 24/7 hospice home, and it was absolutely beautiful. So those are amazing assets to have. We don't have one in our community currently. The nearest is in Jefferson County, so there is one in Watertown, and then the next nearest is in Colchester, Vermont, which is where my grandma lives. But they are amazing facilities, they do amazing work. We just don't have one here.
I have a question.
Yes.
I was very interested in the fact that you said that you went to nursing homes and that you work with patients there. My husband spent the last time of his life at Claxton Hepburn, and you were unable to come and help us with him. What's the difference between a nursing home where there is a nursing staff and a hospital where obviously there is a nursing staff?
I do not know the answer to that question. I can get you the answer to that question, but I don't know it off the top of my head, because that's much more of a nursing discipline. But I agree, I can certainly, if you want follow-up.
It would just be interesting to me to understand the difference.
Yep.
Because my ears really perked up when you said nursing home and that you would go to a nursing home and help there.
The nursing home does have to be on board with that as well. So I know there's.
What's that mean?
Like they have to have a contract in place for us to be able to do that. But if the patients are asking, then we can meet that need.
So would the same apply to a hospital?
That I don't know the answer to. That's much more of a nursing admin, but I just don't have the skill set for it.
And I know you haven't gotten there yet, but I'm thinking about grief and the grieving process. Even though, do you offer any help to those that are grieving whose relative or significant other was not a part of your program,
Yes,
but they
ma'am.
could call you for grieving?
Yep.
Really?
A whole slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm 10 steps ahead and 2 feet behind.
You are. You have all these good ideas.
Okay,
But
thank
yes,
you.
we do. Other questions? You did bring up the 5-star hospice concept, so we are a 5-star hospice. And what is unique about that is that you can search any hospice in the U.S. to see what their community has rated them as, and those scores only come from family surveys. We don't have anything to do with that. So it's really just organic data that comes directly from the families. We I have a couple people who the first time I call them, they're like, this person's birthday is on May 3rd and it's gonna be really hard and I'm gonna need someone to call me then. So I make a note to call that person on that day. Same thing with wedding anniversaries and holidays. If they tell me ahead of time, I think that's gonna be hard, I'll put a note on my calendar and I'll just give them a call around that date to see how things are going. Some people much prefer structured calls, so I usually meet with people every 2 weeks for probably the first 3 or 4 months after one of our patients dies, if that's what they're looking for. And that is really, truly the best part of my job, because I get to learn how much this person loved someone else every single day, and that is amazing to me. So the consistent calls are really, really enriching, and I think they benefit the person a lot, to the point where they very naturally transition out of needing that support. So we get them kind of stabilized, we get them starting to wrap their brains around the fact that this world does still exist without this person in it, and that is hard, but there are ways to manage that, and there are ways to continue a bond with that person even after they're dead. So that very naturally draws to a close. Some of my people are not talkers, and that is okay, but they want my educational newsletters. So we don't talk about death and dying and grief, and what happens is people Google things, and I wish people wouldn't Google things, but they type grief into Google, and still to this day, the most common first response on Google is the 5 stages of grief. Raise your hand if you are familiar with the 5 stages of grief. Okay, so Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was an amazing feminist researcher, way ahead of her time. Fun fact for the night, she was a triplet. All of the research that she did was amazing and very well done, but it was done with people who were dying, not with people who were grieving. Popular culture kind of liked this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step situation, grabbed onto it and tried to apply it to grief. At Hospice, we look at grief through a much more contemporary lens, so the support that people are getting is based on more contemporary processes and about continuing bonds with the person who died. The newsletters mentioned on this slide are what provide bite-sized information around that concept every 3 months or so to the person who's receiving them. If you are a primary caregiver who I call and you're like, I'm not really a talker, that is okay. I do have a couple people who I have called and they've said, no, just send me the newsletters, I don't want to talk about my feelings. And they will call me after every newsletter they get to talk to me about the newsletter, not to talk to me that answer all your questions about that question?
Sort of.
Oh, okay. Do you have another one?
Well, when you were saying that you call them like 6 weeks out, before you call them, do you go to the home so people are familiar with who you are, so they feel more comfortable maybe speaking with you?
That's a good question. I don't. Our social workers and our nurses introduce the idea of bereavement services and the idea that this woman is going to be calling you. Everybody, every family will get a condolence card signed by our team and a letter from me personally before I make that phone call. Just alerting them to the fact that I will be calling them. This is my name, just the basics.
So you aren't introduced to them prior to?
Not usually. Sometimes if we know that it's going to be really fast, or if the families are really struggling with maybe the death of someone from 6 months ago that was on service, then they would already be familiar with me. But I don't usually do the anticipatory grief work. That's usually social work's role.
Okay, and I think you sort of answered my other question, because there's a big difference, for me anyway, there's a big difference from a phone call to an actual sitting down and meeting with you and being able to, you know, have that comfort so that you feel that you can honestly and without trepidation or, you know, any kind of question as to who, what, why, when, where
Yes.
happens. But that is provided.
So I can meet with people either over the phone or on Zoom or in person. I prefer the in-person appointments because I feel like you get a little bit more out of that. But for some people, transportation's an issue, so we can work around that. But yeah, whatever modality works best for them. Yes.
Okay, let's say you call me that first time and I basically took you across the aisle.
Yes.
Okay, and you still keep that file open for the 14 months?
Absolutely.
So if I wanted to call in 2 months and say, I'll change my mind, you
Yep.
still have it open?
Yep. Happens more than you think. Other questions kind of about my thing? A pretty common question we ask is how do you support kiddos? My entire year last year was offering these two interactive grief journals. So I do not work with children individually or in groups, but what I do is work with their parents to educate them on grief and what's normal and what's not, and how to support their kiddos. So we published both of these last year. The one with the turtle on it, that's Gary, he's my grief turtle, is for my elementary school kiddos. These break down grief into weather signs and symptoms. So making the weather match grief symptoms. So maybe you have a cloudy, rainy day, you're sad, you're crying a lot. Maybe it's a snow day where you know it's going to be a hard day, like an anniversary, but you can still go out and do things, you just have to have a plan, right? We got to wear our snow boots and our mittens and our hats. The post-it note version is for my middle and high schoolers because I did not think they would enjoy Gary. I have since been told by many middle and high schoolers that they would have loved Gary. So maybe he will be in the next version. The middle and high school one really goes more into naming the emotions in grief and what that looks like and what is a healthy way to cope and what's not a healthy way to cope. Both of them in the back have a grown-ups guide, and the grown-ups guide is designed to give the adults in the child's life a vocabulary to use with this child, because again, we're going to use death, dying, and dead. We need to use concrete language, but it's also going to give them the background information on more contemporary grief theories beyond the 5 stages. So that really breaks down what they are going to need to know about grief if they're going to support someone else. So we mail those out pretty frequently. Every BOCES counselor in St. Lawrence County has at least 1 copy of each, and I think all the school districts came to our annual workshop, so they also got copies. We have more copies at the office. We have a very generous donor who funds our When Grief Comes to School program, which is responsible for the creation and printing of those. And he was stabilize themselves and kind of give a framework for what they might see in the classroom, what's normal, what's not. And I have learned, we really are there to remind the admin that they have a plan in place and it is okay to follow that plan. Thankfully, we don't do that very often. Questions about the grief? Okay, so now I'm gonna let Jonathan talk at you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Do I look at the camera?
You can look
So, I'm going to talk about suffering. This is another concrete term that we often use, but suffering is very subjective. So one person I can tell you about is B.J. Miller. He is sort of a leading light in the hospice movement. And when he was about 21, he got hit by 11,000 volts of electricity. It led to amputations below the knee of both legs, amputation above the elbow of his left arm, and he retained his right hand. And after many years of convalescence, he decided to become a doctor. And after he became a doctor, he decided to go into hospice. One of the reasons that he went into hospice is one of the primary reasons that all of us go into hospice. Whether we work there, whether we seek hospice services, whether we want to provide hospice services, but that reason is suffering. B.J. Miller identified a few different types of suffering. He said there's the physical suffering that comes with a condition or time. There's the intellectual or emotional suffering that can come from decline. Whatever that suffering may be, if you're feeling it or someone you care about is feeling it, please call us. We are here to alleviate suffering for our patients and, as Kate has pointed out, for their families. So this is something that can get lost in just the general thinking about hospice. But suffering is out there. It lurks out there. And it tends to find us. Should it find you or someone you care about, just call us. There's no commitment to you to become a hospice patient or to put your family in hospice or any of that. But if you know someone is suffering or if you yourself are suffering, call us and we will do everything we can to alleviate that suffering. Does anyone have any other questions about community relations or hospice or how you might gauge suffering? Thank you.
Had to drink like half my water. That was great. We talked about hospice. We talked about what all that looks like. Another big thing that hospice really wants to see more of in the community is attention being given to advanced care planning. So that looks different for everyone. Hospice may be part of your plan. It may not be part of your plan. Regardless, there's a couple tools that hospice just wants you to be aware of when you're thinking about making an advanced healthcare plan. An advanced care plan is just something that you have in place that helps you live the way you want to live and die the way you want to die. Does anyone know or have a healthcare proxy? Do you know what it is? Do you have one? Oh, fabulous. Now, those of you who have a healthcare proxy, does your healthcare proxy know they are your healthcare proxy? Yes. Oh, that is the right answer. Yes. A healthcare proxy can be anyone over the you want to go on hospice and you say no, that is the answer. Your healthcare proxy cannot come in and say, no, they need to go to hospice. You are alert and oriented, you can make your own decisions, they can't make a decision for you. If you cannot make your own decisions, they will make decisions for you. They hopefully will follow whatever the patient's wishes would be around things like organ donation and life support services and pain control. It's easier for that person to have those conversations and make those decisions if you've talked to them about it ahead of time. My mother has asked me to be her healthcare proxy, and I have said no. My sister is a nurse. I feel like she is better suited for that role. If you are asking someone and they say no, that is okay. You also can say no. That's a big responsibility to take on. But it's very helpful if you do identify a healthcare proxy. Even if you don't have a healthcare proxy specifically identified, just having conversations around, yeah, I would like to be on life support, or no, I wouldn't like to be, can just give whoever ends up having to make those decisions for you a better idea of what kind of decisions you would make. Does anyone know what a MOLST is or have one already? Oh, okay. So, a MOLST in New York State is a medical order for life-sustaining treatment. It is always on hot pink paper, super easy to find. This is a doctor's order that other doctors will follow. Again, not a medical professional, but I can tell you that that piece of paper will make a healthcare proxy's job easier because the doctors will just follow what's on that paper. They will make any caregiver's job easier because they know what the plan is in place. And it can be changed and updated at any time. If I brought this up to my primary care provider, they might be like, did you get diagnosed with something and not tell me? But if you do get diagnosed with something or you are aging, it's a good idea to at least have this conversation with your healthcare provider. It is a doctor's order, so they would need to sign it. And if you have questions about it, you should ask them, because I don't know the medical stuff. It is helpful to just have in place. And my mom is a snowbird, so she takes hers with her when she goes. Has anybody heard of the Yellow Dot program? Ooh, nice. So, the New York State Sheriff's Association has what is called the Yellow Dot program. And if you call them and you say, I would like to take part in your Yellow Dot program, they will say, okay, and they'll give you a bunch of free stuff. Who doesn't love free stuff? You will get 2 stickers. One sticker will go on the rear windshield of your vehicle. That sticker will tell first responders that in your glove box, they will find this yellow envelope. In this yellow envelope will be information on who your healthcare proxy is. If you have a MOLST, where it can be found, maybe we put a copy in here. What you would or would not want done to save your life in the event of an accident. And I recommend that you put any sort of like medication allergies or chronic health conditions here so that first responders know that. So if you really want to be as autonomous and make as many decisions as possible for as long as possible, this is a really good way to make sure first responders know the information that they otherwise would not know if you're not responsive. So that one goes in your glove compartment. Your second sticker will go on the front door of whatever door you use most to get in and out of your home. That will tell first responders that that exact same information is found in your freezer. I don't know why it's the freezer, it just is the freezer. I do recommend that if you're putting it in your freezer, you put it in like a gallon Ziploc bag just so it doesn't get possible juice on it. But it will tell them the same thing. Something as simple as this allows you to be as autonomous as possible for as long as possible. Because if there's an emergency, the first responders are going to do everything they can to save you. That is their job. But if that is not something that you want done and you're able to make those decisions, you can share that information ahead of time.
Yes.
Do these things work outside of St. Lawrence County, or are they only inside?
The Yellow Dot program will work in New York State as a whole. And I do know that other states have something similar. I don't know if it, I don't know legality-wise what it would mean if they followed it from a different state, but it's pretty nationwide. But the Sheriff's Department will give them to you for free. Love it.
So So I call the sheriff's department, or I call the sheriff's department?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Okay.
Because I only have 4 left. They're my demonstration ones. Again, anything in that that you think would be helpful for first responders to have. So allergies, especially if you're allergic to medication. I already alluded to this, but I think what I have learned most about advanced care planning is that A, it's a hard topic to tackle because like nobody wants to talk about that, right? We're all just gonna think somebody else is gonna die. I know I'm gonna die, but I'm not really gonna die. You want to be as autonomous as possible. You want as much say over your body and your health care for as long as possible. You need to make a plan ahead of time. Even if you go and you try to have these conversations with your kids or your grandkids or your nieces or nephews, whoever, and they don't want to have the conversations, you can still do the work. It can still be there for them when they need it, and you'll still be in control. If you're anything like me, you really want to be in control. So make the plan ahead of time.
We have one question.
Yes.
Do they have to be local?
Does the healthcare proxy have to be local? Nope.
Or what if they have to? I mean, I was one, and I got rushed to the hospital for my work. My closest is Michigan.
If they know what your wishes are ahead of time and they can verbalize those in their physical absence, then they'll be recognized as your healthcare proxy. Advanced care planning in and of itself is a massive undertaking. This may look familiar to some of you look familiar to me. Hospice published this as our gift to the community for our 40th year anniversary. It is a roadmap's guide to life. It is a comprehensive look at advanced care planning, and it doesn't just go into healthcare proxies and goals. It goes into making a list of all the financial assets that you have, making a list of all of your passwords for all of your electronic accounts. Your favorite child does not know that they are the password to everything, unless you write it all down. So this gives you one centralized location to put the information that your family's gonna need after you're dead, ahead of time. And we have these for sale at the office. If you're interested, you can call the office. But those are pretty nifty to have. That was my mom's Mother's Day present. The last little bit of our hospice program is that we aren't just hospice, we also have a palliative care program. So our advanced illness management program has 3 nurse practitioners, and to be clear, they do not replace your primary care physician. They are there to supplement that care. Our nurse practitioners do home visits, so like old-fashioned house calls. They go to your house so you don't have to go out when it's negative 37 degrees outside. They will come right to you. They can assess your pain and symptoms either at their visits, or they can call and talk to our nurse manager at the office for this program. She can get refills for prescriptions. If you're experiencing symptoms of a UTI, she can order lab work. We can arrange for the specimen to be dropped off. That way you're not lugging yourself into a primary care doctor's office for something we can manage pretty quickly. This does bill your insurance the same way any normal doctor would, so you're very unlikely to receive a bill for that. And our nurse manager for this program has an amazing ability to find prescription savings for anyone and everyone. She is amazing, and she will spend a significant amount of time on the phone with insurance companies if there's some pre-authorization issue. She's very good at what she does and advocating for her patients. So if you feel like someone would benefit from this type of support, this is palliative support. So you don't have to have a life expectancy of 6 months or less. You just have to have a chronic health condition that you want managed. So she could get you onto the schedule pretty quickly, and on that program, you can go seek whatever treatment you want. So if you have cancer and you want to go get chemo and radiation, you go get chemo and radiation. You're not on hospice, you can do anything you want. That I think is really helpful because it also gives you, if you get to the point in your illness where you are considering hospice, you're already familiar with our agency. Our nurses do courtesy visits to our AIM patients sometimes. Our social workers are starting to do that. So you're already